So, welcome everyone. I'm Eleanor Kaufman, and it's Nechla Achik who's been so far speaking. So it's the two of us who have organized this day on innovative qualitative methods in migration research. And we're very pleased to welcome everybody in the room, but also a larger number of you online, and I hope you can hear us. Just wanted to say that a little bit in terms of introduction is that Nechla and I have been working for, this is our third year, working on an EU-funded project called Dynamic. And we have been in charge of a work package with a lot of complex field work in 3 African countries, because the project Dynamic is about decision making in relation to migrations in Africa. So we've been working on 3 countries in Africa, very different: Nigeria, West Africa, Morocco, North Africa, and Kenya, East Africa. And we've also been working on migrants from those countries in diasporic communities in Italy and the UK. So we've conducted interviews with them. But in this particularly extensive and intensive, you could say, qualitative research, Nechla in particular has been extremely innovative. And so what Nechla came up with in terms of trying to look at longitudinal issues, which are always very difficult to do in migration research, is what she'll be presenting. She's the first presenter, and she'll be presenting on digital diaries. So this is about selected prospective migrants, in this case, because they hadn't actually migrated, the ones that we did the digital, or actually the digital diaries with. These were prospective migrants who had been interviewed already, and we then recontacted them and said, would you be prepared to do these digital diaries, which went on for about 6 months, and with regular contact, and it was using WhatsApp. So this was it was probably the initiator of the idea of today's workshop. The other papers in this workshop are also bringing together the experience of undertaking research, I think, generally with either, you could say, innovative use of technology or of creative methods, so, or a combination, of course, of the two. So we'll hear about in the second paper about video diaries. I can't say too much about the second session because I'm not quite sure in terms of the ethnography how that's been done. But then in the afternoon, we have another, in the last session, we have 2 papers that come out of those of us working together again in relation, I would say, to health issues, both mental health and physical health, in relation to health issues. And again, here we've been looking at various forms of creative methods. And one of the methods we'll be talking about is walking interviews. But here we'll be a little bit critical because walking interviews have become very fashionable. But I think that they have their limitations. So we're going to also be suggesting in the afternoon that maybe we need a combination of methods that speak to each other. And so in the last paper that I'll be presenting with Ala Al-Ibrahim, who's in the room with me, and Ellen Kelly, who's off, I must say, to a wedding in Portugal, that we'll be arguing that we might want to combine one method, that is the walking interviews, with maybe a more traditional critique, and that is critical cartography, which is also very interesting, and that we might want to combine with the two. So hopefully we'll have a very fruitful day. The first session, which is looking at both digital diaries and video diaries in 2 EU-funded research projects. there'll be lunch for those who are here in the room from 12:30 to 13:30. And then that session will be, there'll be a break after that second session at 3 o'clock. And then we come back to a session which is called Participatory Methods in Health Research. Now, one thing I just wanted to say is because there is a large number of you online, one of the things which we just ask you is if you want to put your hand up to ask a question after presentations, but if we don't seem to respond, then if you can put in chat that you would like to speak. Okay, I think I'd just like to thank, of course, for the funding of this workshop, UKRI and the EU, who've been funding the Dynamic project in particular. And we've again been UKRI funded for the one in the second.
So I'm going to talk about the use of digital diaries we use in the Dynamic project. And we have used it to capture decision-making processes. And it's a Horizon-funded project, and the UK part is funded through the UKRI, thanks to Brexit, as you know. And as Eleanor already told, the focus on the Dynamic project is on migration, and with a particular focus on Europe and Africa. And we wanted to look at how people make decisions, whether they decide, how they make the decision to migrate, and how they, why and how. And another aspect of the project also looks at, or a central aspect of it, it looks also at policies on migration decision making. So it's a mixed methods project. We have been doing the qualitative aspect of it, which included semi-structured interviews with aspiring migrants and the people who are in Kenya, Morocco, and Nigeria. And we also did interviews in the diaspora in the UK and Italy. And digital diaries is part of it, and expert interviews. And then the quant element of the project is much bigger. It entails social media analysis, survey with policymakers, survey with migrants, and a randomized trial in Senegal. So the digital diaries is really just a small part of it. Yeah. So in terms of methodology, what digital diaries means is it kind of involves participants recording their thoughts and feelings and experiences and behaviors around a specific topic over time, typically using smartphones and other social media platforms for submissions. And this method fits well within the participatory research design. It gives participants control over data submission and how they want to submit it, you know, and at which frequency. And therefore, it kind of promotes also a deeper engagement with the research process. And because you collect the data over longer periods, it's also, it has a longitudinal element to it. And the methods allows an in-depth exploration of various aspects of human life, providing rich insights into temporal narratives, such as migration experiences, decision-making processes, and emotional reflections. That was the kind of key reason why we wanted to use it. And they have digital diaries, they have, and video diaries, they have gained popularity in social science, and as you can imagine, especially during the pandemic. Yeah. It has become more common, but there aren't actually many articles about it or much research about it. So, and a lot of the stuff that I found was about diary methodology, but not about digital diaries, which I think is a completely different dimension. Okay, so the ethics issues we had and ethics application, I think that's one of the key things. As you can imagine, whenever you apply for ethics and it's not a traditional method, then you get lots of trouble, lots of questions. And the kind of issues we had in order to make sure we get ethics permission was to make sure to convince the ethics panel that how we deal with the data, how we protect participants' personal data, how we protect the submissions they make, how we transfer the numbers and so on, and what we do with the submissions that come, where we download it, and so on. So we had to justify that. How can you make sure that you provide confidentiality and anonymity when people submit video diaries, for example? So we had to deal with all these questions, and we were using WhatsApp. One of our arguments was that WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted, where files and communication between respondents and researchers are protected and encrypted, so that only the researcher and the participant can see the content. And then another issue was about making sure that the participants have data, but we couldn't transfer cash. So we had to think of ways how to make sure they get the data without getting the cash. And we had a designated phone number that was to make, for several reasons. First of all, to keep the boundaries between professional, in a professional way between the researcher and the participants, and to make clear to the participants that the phone number is only used for digital diary collection. This also ensures privacy for the participant. So I'm sure ethics is an issue we will discuss at the Q&A, and that's one of the biggest challenges, I guess, if you want to use a method like that. And I'm happy to kind of go into detail later. One of the key things was that, how do you recruit participants, and how do you make sure they know about what they get themselves into? So as Eleanor already said, they were recruited through other partners who have interviewed them. So we, once we were put in touch with them, I sent them a participant information sheet, and I put kind of down what I wrote because I think it's important. So what we did was we talked to them about the process, what it involves if they take part, which was like we will have a phone conversation to explain digital diaries, because many people didn't know how it would work, so they needed to have an idea of what's expected. So that's what we put down in the participant information sheet. And what we wanted for them, for their engagement, was that we wanted them to share with us any thoughts, feelings, and news you have on your migration process and journey. And we were quite flexible in terms of what we wanted from them. We said, you can send voice messages, text messages, short videos, screenshots, links to anything that you were kind of imagining we're following this person in, for that period to see what happened in their life. But we didn't want to be too restrictive. We didn't want to give too many prompts, because we wanted them to also just treat it like a diary you would on an everyday level. And in terms of engagement, we didn't expect people to send a lot. So we said it can just be really brief. We didn't want to overwhelm people with lots of entries that you have to constantly send something. We said, as much as you want, and at least once a month. So that was the condition. So now in terms of data collection, how we did it. So I would say we had like 3 phases. The first one was contacting them on WhatsApp, talking to them. The conversation was really important. I wanted to establish a relationship and know that they understand the project, and also explain to them in my own words and respond to their questions, because And we all needed that conversation, I realized. So it was very useful to have that discussion. And still, despite that, many people didn't know how to start, what to say, what to share. So I ended up sending lots of prompts, encouraging, and telling them that anything works, just send anything, your thoughts, your feelings, and so on. And we send data to them monthly through our partners. And everything they sent, I downloaded it straight away and kept a log of it and kept a log of the WhatsApp messages and the voice messages, videos, they were transcribed. And later on, everything was analyzed in vivo. And the last stage of the digital diaries involved arranging an online interview where I looked at their first interview they had, what they have submitted, and then based on that, ask kind of questions about what has changed, about process and things that they mentioned, and I wanted to go into detail. So it wasn't the same as the semi-structured interviews we did, where we asked them lots of questions. This was really specific. And the online follow-up interviews, some of them were 20 minutes, some of them 45 minutes. It was just for the purpose of trying to see their experiences with digital diaries, actually, but also to see what has changed, to capture that change and the process, follow up with that. So, and I would say on its own, using the digital diaries for that reason, because you get different kind of submissions and you only get to see what people share. You're not leading them too much, not very structured. So you don't, and I'll show in the next slide what people have submitted. So that's why I see it a very useful method, also as in triangulation with other kind of methods. It helps to see that they have been interviewed before, if you can speak to them in other ways. So about the data. In total, we had 56 people whose contact details we got, but in the end, we remained at only 18. So 22 people gave consent. They were happy with the digital diary to start, but then in the end, only 18 people remained. And I did final follow-up interviews with 13 people. And of them, 15, most of them were men and 3 women. Some women dropped out. That's why. Yeah, so most of them were men, actually. Although the key contributors were women, so the numbers are a bit confusing. But in the first part of the graph, what you see is that I also had high dropout rate. Some people didn't have WhatsApp, others didn't. They wanted to take part. I was given their details, but there was a phone number missing. And then there were some people that didn't reply at all. And some replied, but didn't continue. And then some were French speakers. So you can see a really high dropout rate. And we also didn't expect, we expected a high dropout rate, because, because you expect very intense, you expect a lot of engagement from the respondents. So in terms of submission, so on the bar chart, you see the main submissions, main people, it was voice messages. It was easier for people to leave voice messages. Some wrote text messages, and a few left also videos, personal videos of their working life and so on. And I encourage people to leave voice messages. That was the kind of prompt I was given when they said they didn't know what to do. I said, just leave a voice message. And I have voice messages that are just 1 minute long, where people say, oh, I'm not feeling well, or I haven't really done anything, and this and that. And then up to 20 minutes where people just say, oh, I've just come out of work and, I can hear the traffic noise, or you can hear the sound of birds at night, really, nice background sounds. So they were talking, leaving voice messages as they were walking or on their own at home. So that was quite nice to listen to the voice messages. And as you can see, there are different types. I think this is really important. There are different types of submissions. That's why I had people who hardly submitted anything. The one that has the numbers is the number of people that left a voice message. So some people left really few. This one has only one, and others 24. This is my key star. She left loads of voice messages. And then other people just left, sent leads and links, I don't know, it's 50, 50, so I had like 50 real Facebook messages, very interesting ones, with some description. This guy, I always ask him to explain why he left the link and what it means. What I want to kind of say is, so it also together we had like 280 submissions. And as I said, it looks like some people weren't engaged much, but sometimes those, we just send one message, and one person who dropped out, she only sent one message, and I've used that message. So it's like, it's really interesting what people can say. It's not that the quantity is important, but really the quality in this case. So that's the analysis of all the transcripts of the submitted video digital diaries, and how I've coded them. I've kind of put it down to just show you, the communication with researchers, whether it's giving instructions and reminders, talking about airtime, asking me for help as the researchers with their migration journey, and so on. That's the most intense communication between me and the respondents, and it has been very intense engagement. But in terms of what people shared, you see that life struggle. So it was one topic that came out. People were talking about their, of course, living conditions, working conditions, and some people, when I asked them why did you take part, they wanted the world to know. They wanted to be part of this research so others know about their struggle. So from their perspective, it's really important to explain how they struggle with their conditions. And obviously, because we asked them about migration journeys, that's the third most populated node, where they talk about which routes they would like to take, what they have heard about others, what others have taken, the issues they have with visa and visas for migration, and so on. So the other thing that I think is interesting is that a lot of people also talked about the government, almost half of the respondents, and they talked about corruption, or that the government is calling on the government to act, and so on. And I think they were more outspoken, critically outspoken about the government, and that's something that when we compare it with the interviews our partners did on the ground, they were not as critical as when they were speaking through the digital diary. So one reason could be that I was in the UK, they felt more maybe confident to talk to somebody outside of the country. But the other thing is, they were critical also because things were happening, they were angry, and then they were expressing their anger and frustration in that moment. So that's one of the positive sides of the digital diaries, that you can capture that emotion. So I explain it through that, and so on. So yeah, these are just, yeah. So the way I've analyzed the digital diary submissions, as I said, we wanted to capture the process, and I think we're able to kind of do that, and it helped me to kind of come up with this concept, and that's how I am going to analyze my data. So I think based on the submissions I had, we can, with the digital diaries, it helped us to kind of focus at the phase before they actually migrate, and because we talked to people who were still in the planning and thinking, so that we're able to focus more on that phase. So I would split it into 3 phases. The first one, I call it the Japan pledge. I'll go into detail about that, but it's basically all the information I had, people talking about the government and their life condition, that kind of explains, they get really frustrated, hopeless, and migration. They talk about migration as an option. Only wise people, would migrate. So, and then the next stage is when they look for, how can I migrate? Where can I go? What are my options? Should I study? Can I work? What kind of work contract can I get? Can I afford it? How risky it is? So I think that's the exploration options, and it's where intermediaries play a big role, mainly informal ones, where you, I'll talk about that in a minute. And then the last stage is kind of where they have made up their mind. They they've done all their research and they know where they want to go. So some of them started learning the language because they knew they wanted to go to Germany, and Germans don't speak that much English, as I say. So you know that or you build a successful traveler profile by making sure you get somewhere else to show that you get visa, you go back, and so on. And what I've seen is also that some people maybe start already not mentally not investing in the country because they've made up the decision, they've done their research and so on. So I think the key outcome of the digital diaries is that we were able to capture this process. And I don't have much time, but I just want to show you the type of stuff people shared. Videos about how bad it is, for example, as in this one in Nigeria. It was a very emotional video. And then this is this woman who sends a picture of himself in his music, in his band, talking about the Japa phenomenon, which is, where that's the only language everybody understands. This is the text voice message, yeah. And then talking again about how bad it is in Nigeria. This one, it's a voice message, but you can see, she talks about how hard it is in Nigeria. She's quite upset when she left this voice message. And you see how she talks, she was the one who was like really engaging, and she had lots of personal stuff, and like she says, so again, criticize the government, everything is increasing, annoying, and I'm just out there in this country, but I want to do something legal. And and they call it Japan, which means run away or escape. And she said, it has been on my mind. Many people had said that it has been on their mind, but she wants to do legally and good night. So that's a really personal message as well. I got lots of messages like that from I got lots of messages from people addressing me directly. I felt I really established a relationship over. And then this one is a text message. So that's again, I get the voice message, very emotional, and then you have this text message, pre-thought, really, clear sentences, and he talks about migration is so unpredictable, so risky, and so difficult to realize what he's saying. And he saw with my hope in my heart and determination in my spirit. I might not know what lies ahead, but I know that I will face and armed with nothing but my dreams and the courage to pursue them. So that's why I think the first stage is really important, where you need to be in that mental stage, and to do that you go through all that, difficulties to come there. And only then you're kind of strong enough to then embark on the journey and so on. So I'm almost finished. The next stage, but I'm not going to talk, is where intermediaries come in, where you watch, you go on apps, watch this podcast. So this is where you have mainly explore what's out there, but it's the kind of place where you're most vulnerable and where you might work with some agents that are a bit dodgy. So yeah. And then the last, obviously the documentation stage, some people who have the funds and the papers can do it, but we have also lots of people who don't have it. As some people were sharing, they take the Mediterranean route, and as this person has written, it's not easy, my sister. We are in trouble in Africa, so I just wanted to highlight that. And that's the sub-Saharan migrants in Morocco. They were sharing how difficult it is for them. They're kind of stuck there. Some of them didn't have papers, or they don't have the fund. So the three processes are really pre-migration. It is a phase where you can intervene as a policymaker if you want to prevent people from taking exploitative routes. So that's why I think it's important for policymakers to focus on that stage. And then just as a concluding remark, I think it has really helped us to identify this pre-journey stage and to get a deeper understanding of the decision-making processes that's, I think, being overlooked. And then it also highlights the role of social media and digital technology and decision making. I haven't presented that here much, but yeah. And one thing, it has also its limitations. That's, as I said at the beginning, you need to bring it together with other sources. So thanks very much.
So I think what we'll do is to have questions after this, and maybe we can have a few minutes at the end to compare the two papers. The next one will be online. But at least I have to say, it's good that the lecturer has finished with one of the conclusions I think that we're going to come up with overall about triangulation and the use of different methods rather than being focused on just one. So can we maybe ask if there are questions in the room first, and then we will move on. Yes, Jenna.
Thank you, Nejla. It was such an exciting paper, and I'm really excited about the idea of digital diaries. I have actually two questions. One of them is related to JAPA, because you shared some pictures from like social media platforms. Were your participants sharing those videos?
Yeah.
Are those videos also circulated as JAPA? Like, are they also, do they use, for instance, the hashtag JAPA? Because I'm thinking about the digital culture Haraga. Like in North Africa, there is also, this burning wish to migrate to Europe. And they create songs and videos, and they share those digital, products under the name of Haraga. And I see some parallels, which is very exciting. And also the second question is related about all these everyday situations in the voice messages, because you mentioned you could hear the background voices or their emotional situation. Are these also elements of the analysis, or are you just looking at what they're communicating with you? I think it would be very exciting to include, those aspects as well. For instance, do they share emojis or, all those like everyday situations which can be traced in digital communication? Are they part of your analysis?
Thank you. Thanks for the hashtag. I haven't thought about that actually, so I might go back and look at that.
It might be a digital culture.
Yeah.
Digital culture.
I know everybody talks about JAPA, and even when we went to Nigeria for a workshop, they were playing a play, and it was called JAPA. So it is, topic highly being discussed, also very critical. And then about analyzing, what I've done with the voice messages, all I've done is at this stage to code them as whether it's sad, neutral, positive, and so on. So I've coded it like that, but I didn't have time yet to kind of go into depth and analyze. But with the emojis, I haven't thought about the emojis either. Yeah, so but that's your area, isn't it?
Yeah.
So it's good to know.
Because then it would make sense, it's not just an interview, but you would think about the digitality, the platform itself also because it creates the meaning, So exciting. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, but can we? I'm not sure. We don't know what else. So, do you want to close your chat? Are there questions? We have Aruna and Emilia, but we need also to give those online a fair access to questions. So who's was it David? And then you want to say, and then we need to make sure that we have people online who can ask questions.
Sure, thank you. Thanks very much. That is, I was just very excited about this method of gathering data. I wanted to, because I'm thinking of this in terms of the traditional methods of data gathering, like interviews where you engage with the person that you're collecting information from within a matter of days. Now, we're talking about a long period of time, 6 months. I wonder how you dealt with the participants' fatigue. I know you mentioned that you started with the 50, 58, 18, then you dropped down to 18, and then ultimately 13 you interviewed. How did that affect the quality of the data that you collected and your overall reliability of the information you gathered?
So I had like the numbers of 58 people, or contacts of 58 people. So that means initially a lot of people who were interviewed said, yes, I'm happy to be continue to be involved in dynamic, pass on my details. So that's the number. But then I ended up, when I contacted people, I had lots of people who kind of didn't respond, they didn't have WhatsApp. So in the end, I had like around 22 people who, or maybe let's say 30, who said, yeah, I'm happy to continue. And then they didn't. So I couldn't, some of them I had to say, sorry, it's not working because they spoke French. I didn't speak French. And then I didn't see a way of kind of continuing. So with the 22, I had 2 people, 4 in the end dropped out. And so that's where you had that fatigue. I had some people saying it's just too much, I don't have time for this. And they left and I couldn't question much. So I didn't know exactly why they left. I think one person wanted data, but she couldn't get it on her phone. She needed to pay a cash. We couldn't give cash, so we had to let her go. That was a technical issue because we couldn't give them cash. She had like debts on her phone, and she could only get new data when that's being paid off, so we couldn't do that. It was sometimes difficult not to know why people don't respond, so I had to strike a balance between pushing them a little bit, but then also not pushing them too much. And we gave them the data. For some people, it was an incentive to continue, and for others, it didn't matter at all. So I kept sending data to the people, although they didn't really respond within a month or 2, for example. But then I had one guy who hardly responded. And then in the end, he responded to my final question, are you available for an interview? And he was. And it was interesting to interview him because then I could see why he wasn't able to take part. He said, I was really busy, I didn't feel good, but now I've got a new job and I don't want to. He changed his migration plans, actually. He said, now I've got a new job, actually, there's no point in migrating, and I'm trying to persuade young people not to migrate and these things. So you could see a process, but mainly because I was able to catch up with him towards the end. So, but a lot of them, they were really upset that it finished, because they were always checking on me. I was checking on them. I was always responding to all the messages they sent. Sometimes I didn't realize when they left really emotional messages because I was just briefly listening to them and just acknowledging. I was acknowledging it straight away. And I told them at the beginning, I'm not going to analyze it straight away. So I will always acknowledge it. But then sometimes they left really emotional messages saying, friend has died, this and that. And I was like, oh, thank you. So I felt really bad when I listened to it. So I went back and I said, oh, I'm not listening to it properly. Really sorry about your loss. And you're okay. So we kind of had a really nice relationship where they wished me a nice happy Sunday and all these things, and they were sad when it finished. So.
Okay, can we maybe go on to those online? I think it's
really,
I can't see
this one,
any hands up.
but there's a here online.
Sorry.
Here. Yeah. So we have one online. Yeah. Okay. So the question is, how have you handled the disclosure of sexual harassment and communication with family of origin? So I had one disclosure of sexual harassment, but it was in the past, and the person I didn't respond to that apart from saying I'm really sorry, because it was something in the past. She felt confident enough to share it with me. And there was no, nobody in danger in that time. The harm was already done, and so there wasn't much I could do. That's all I can say, I think. And then I'm not sure about what you mean in communication with family of origin. Do you want to?
Well, that would be with the family. That's what it means. Did it go back to? No.
Yeah. Not.
Can I also just say that we had lots of sexual harassment coming out in the interviews because people would, some of the ones you know, had experienced it, who had actually migrated, and we had several people who had been deported. And the classic study of African migrations, at least that which is put up by the EU, is it's heavily irregular. And this is where you're getting a lot of studies of irregular migrants journeying through Africa. That's the typical. Ours, again, we ranged much more widely. But we did have people telling us some horrific stories, not necessarily through the digital diaries, because these people hadn't migrated, but the ones who actually had gone through a journey, particularly those in Morocco, who had followed the typical West African route through to Morocco. Yeah, we had some pretty horrendous stories. But that was in the past, and it's nobody's giving you a name or anything. It's you know, they're not telling you who did it exactly. They're just saying it happened to them.
Do we move on to Ascension?
Any other questions?
Yeah, to answer it.
Yep. So yep.
Thank you, very interesting. I have many questions. I mean, couple maybe about ethical aspect, one and something else. So one was before you showed the people choices around using voice, video, or text. And do you have a sense about what maybe prompted their choice of different kind of medium compared to why they chose something compared to others? And then another is like more about, and also there was any differences in your kind of data that you are collecting and looking at depending on which medium they've chosen. And just something ethical I was curious about, the screenshots they sometimes show things in social media or other people. How does it work with ethics when they are showing images of other people who have not consented to be used for research?
I think the screenshots I shared were all public screenshots. So I didn't share any personal pictures of them. They shared personal pictures, personal videos. I didn't share that with them. And I was in the ethics forum. I said, if we share anything personal, we have to anonymize it, you know, so it's not identifiable, or we will ask them for permission. So I didn't want to say from the beginning in the ethics that we won't collect at all, because I wanted to see what kind of material I get. And I put it in the ethics form and in the consent form that if you share anything personal, we will get your consent again, you know. But in the end, we didn't get that many personal videos, and there were a few nice ones, but I didn't feel like, you know, again, you could analyze it, but I didn't focus on that. So for me, there was no need to go back and ask them for permission to share that.
Technology will be very different. We cannot do this college.
I think it's really maybe the next presentation where it's much more.
Yeah. We'll be talking about that in the next presentation.
And that's why I encourage people to leave voice messages. I had a couple of videos coming in where people had shown their visa application, response from the embassy with names, passport numbers, and I was like, okay, we can't really use ever these kind of things. So that's why I didn't encourage people to leave videos. I didn't encourage them, you know, but I said to them, you can do whatever you want, you know, however, yeah, it's up to you how you submit. So I never intervened in that sense, but I encouraged them to leave voice messages. That was the easiest for people. And some people prefer text messages, and the text messages were good, well thought, you know, they were more controlled. They were thinking, sitting down and thinking and then writing. But most people who sent text messages were, because I said, oh, you've sent this reel, can you explain? And they were just briefly writing a little bit. And English is not their native language, so it's easier for them to send voice messages.
Shall we move on to the next paper? And the next presentation is also from a project which is what we call a sister project within this EU funding on migration decision making. And this is going to be, it's Asunción Fresnosa Flot from Université Libre de Bruxelles, and Amaya Lengreo from ISTE in Lisbon. And it's from idea to the ground video diaries, in this case, as a tool to explore emotions and temporality in Asians' migration decision-making.
Thank you very much, Eleanor, on behalf of the Aspire project, the sister project of Dynamic. Amaya and I are very thankful to be here with you, even though we are online. Apologies because of our personal and professional circumstances. So before we present our video diaries methodology and experiences around this method, I would like to provide you first some information about our project as a context in which this methodology took place. Okay. Yeah, so we are focusing on Asia to Europe migration, and we are very interested in this phenomenon because, as we know, Asia has been the main how can I say, origin place of many migrants in the world, and in Europe, it is the second largest migrant population. And we can see in this figure that, yeah, indeed, Asians, in terms of migrants stuck in Europe, Asians are really a large migrant population. In terms of our project duration, like Dynamic, we are also of 3-year duration, but recently we asked for a 2-month extension to finish all deliverables and milestones. And the project is composed of 62 members in 11 countries, 5 countries in Asia, Philippines, Vietnam, Japan, Hong Kong and mainland China, and Thailand. And in Europe, we have Belgium, Czech Republic, Germany, Italy, Finland, and Portugal. So we are working and focusing on the same topic as Dynamic, the decision-making of aspiring migrants or maybe remigrants and non-migrants. We have 3 objectives, and today we will particularly focus on objectives number 2 and 3 on the micro and meso-level drivers of mobility aspiration and or intention in the decision-making of Asians in our project, specifically to determine the temporality of this process. Here are the members of our consortium. We have 10 beneficiaries and 3 associated partners. So our partners are mostly university institutions. And here is the focus. Like Dynamic, we also look at migration decision-making as a fluid and changing process. And we would like to capture this fluidity of this process through our video diary methodology. So this is the focus of our presentation today. We have been applying different qualitative methodology or data collection techniques. We have actually 3 empirical work packages. The first one focusing on the macro level of migration decision making. So we adapted policy content analysis and expert interviews. And then our work package, empirical work package 2 focuses on the meso and micro level of decision making. So we conducted first semi-structured interviews of aspiring migrants and remigrants, focusing on at least 25 participants. And then from this pool of participants, we recruited half of them to participate on our social network mapping. And the last empirical work package is composed of 2 methods of data collection, video diaries, and focus group discussions. So for our video diaries participants, we recruited from the pool of participants of social network mapping data sets. So the idea of our project started with this inspiration to humanize data collection when we are studying migration decision making through audiovisual methodology with participative dimension to capture the emotions and temporality of decision making. But on the ground, in reality, we encountered many challenges and difficulties. First is regarding the approval of several ethics committees and data protection officers in relation to the implementation of data protection and ethics, GDPR, and also in line with our project's open science principle in relation to Horizon Europe research scheme. And we also encountered the complex bureaucracy in different local spaces and context. For example, we also needed to prepare different set of documents, information sheet, consent form, identification form, etc., and translated into different languages in our project. And since we embraced open science principle, it was very difficult for us to argue to the project officer of the European Commission at the beginning of the project that we show the faces of our participants in the video diaries, telling us that since they are part of the two other data collection techniques, semi-structured interviews and social network mapping, it would be difficult to protect their anonymity later on. And so we had no choice. We still would like to adapt the video diary methodology. So we said that, okay, we need to find another way. And we decided to use avatar instead. We asked our participants to choose an object or whatever matter or sceneries that could represent their emotions and state of mind during the recording of their videos. And we also need to make sure that their voices would not be recognized. And we will explain that later on present our strategy on how we did that. And also, of course, to avoid any personal information in their narratives. So these are some of the characteristics of our video diary methodology. So our target is 6 participants per country. And like dynamic, we have also this interest to make longitudinal approach in capturing the temporality of migration decision-making. So we decided to collect video diaries every 3 months, so March, June, September, and December. And each participants were instructed to make or record their video diaries during 10 minutes maximum. And we come up with a common set standardized guide with different questions. And translated, of course, into different languages in the project. We allow our participants to use different tools, equipments to record their videos. And of course, they are free to also choose whatever avatar they would like. And regarding the sound, we needed first to transcribe the interviews and pseudonymize them at the same time while transcribing, so to prevent all this personal data be open and discovered when we finally make this video diary data set open access 5 years after the end of the project. And to protect, the voices, we come up with this strategy that the researchers in each team would will record again the video diaries. It's a lot of work on our side. So it's also challenging because researchers are not actors, and they needed to re-dramatize the emotions in each video diaries, and also, of course, using the local languages. And regarding the technical aspect, we used the DaVinci Resolve software that has been approved by the University Libre de Brussels, the coordinator institution of this ASPAR project. And this software is apparently GDPR friendly. At the beginning, we wanted to use other software, but it was not approved. And all the video diaries were saved in MP4 format. So now I would like to pass the floor to my colleague Amaya Langreo, who has been active in coordinating the implementation of this methodology on the ground to present more our experiences as a consortium. Okay, Amaya.
Thank you, Asuncion, and thank you, Eleanor, and the Dynamic project. I was actually expecting and waiting for this workshop, as this has been a very challenging work package and a very challenging process of applying this methodology under the open data requirements and the GDPR for us. And I was really expecting and waiting to know how you did it on your side. On our side, as Asuncion was saying, using video diaries without being able to show the face or being able to show the original voice was a huge challenge for us. But as Asuncion was saying, we manage, and we will show you how somehow. But here you have the questions that we share with all the participants. So they would answer these questions on their video diaries. It is important to say that the video diaries, they film by themselves. The researcher was not present when filmed. So they all answer these questions every 3 months. These questions and the next slide are also questions that they had to answer. As you will see, we were working with very different contexts, migration paths, and context and profiles of migrants. So it was also difficult to apply the same questions to all of them. For some of them, it not always made sense, the questions, or sometimes they were misunderstood, as we were not present as researchers, and we could not control or clarify or help them to understand what the questions mean. But we will talk about that later. Please, next slide. So yes, it was a very, very big challenge because a lot of the researchers had never edited before. And also some participants were used to use videos on their phones. So what we did first is we did a sample of video diary. So I record myself an example of video diary with my teddy bear, just doing a made up speech about migration. And I share with the researchers and also with all the participants. And then we did a lot of training sessions with all the researchers, small groups of researchers to teach them how to edit. We also record some tutorials, specific tutorials for this Aspire project, so they could access whenever they had a doubt on editing. But we did it as simple as possible, this editing process. Although, as Asuncion was saying, we needed to take out the voice and then transcribe this text, pseudonymize the information, and then re-record the voice with the researcher's voice, and then attach this new voice to the image. Please, next slide. So even though we had, there are big advantages always of the video diary method. First, as I was saying, the participants are actively taking part in data production. There were some cases that they needed help, and I will talk about that. But in general, all of them record their video diaries by themselves. And it's very interesting how they did it, how they approach these video diaries, how they use the image, how they use the speech, and we will talk about that. They could, as I said, it was really stimulating for a lot of them because they could express their emotions. And for some of them, it was really a moment of somehow intimacy for them, and a very personal space where they could talk how they were feeling. Also the creativity in the way how they choose avatars. We have very interesting cases, and we will share some of them, of how they choose this object or landscape or whatever could translate what they were feeling. It was also a time saver for the researchers because it was something that was done while the researchers were working on analyzing other data and other tasks. And finally, we actually do have a huge and diverse data set right now. We have 284 video diaries with emotional and temporal dimensions done through 11 countries involved with a very different cases and context of migration. So yes, now here you have an example. This one is from the Vietnamese team of how they start to analyze. We are in the beginning of this analysis right now. We just closed our data set in March. So we need time now because it's a huge data set, as I was saying. But here, the Vietnamese team, for example, case one would be the participant one, as you will see is always anonymized, pseudonymized, all the information. But what they did is they divided first video on March, and it says, for example, idealized life in Finland, but didn't have the concrete plans yet. On June, on the video of June, they have awareness, new awareness of financial challenges, and they were considering some scholarships. In September, he was starting to think about Germany and other countries. He was searching for study programs. And in December, he came back to the first decision, who was to migrate to Finland, and he was researching scholarships. But here he started to have some concerns about the political situation in Europe. So somehow the Vietnamese team in each phase did a summarize of what was the motion, what was the point in the migration path, or the pre-migration situation, as the dynamic project we're talking in the previous presentation. Can we go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So here, some examples of avatars and how they could be very interesting sometimes. Here, this participant choose to film his keys or her keys. And she says, these are the keys I collected on my last years, some in Japan and some in the Netherlands. This is how I feel right now. It's like, okay, I will go wherever. And if there is a key, I will take it. This is a good example of avatar. Next slide. An aquarium, very interesting also. And this participant, it was actually in Belgium, and he say, I guess my fish can represent my feelings at this moment because they are living in a nice environment with good care provided by me. It is just like me living in a country with social security and health care, all provided by the government. And the last example of avatar, the object that can represent my feeling right now is a tree in the winter. At the moment, I have been through some difficulties in my life, but every crisis finds its solution. I just need to give myself time so this lifeless tree will thrive during winter and flourish in the spring again. So we have some poetry also. We have a lot of creativity in the avatars. I think at the beginning, I must say, and I must confess here that I was really frustrated with all these limitations, but sometimes from the limitations come some ideas also. So I think this avatar, in a sense, it's interesting, but we will also see the challenges ahead. So we would like to share with you some video diaries. This is from we will show two, just a little part, just the first minute of these two video diaries is from the same participant, Chinese, in Portugal. And the one was filmed in March, and the second one was filmed in June. So Asuncion, can you please?
今天是2024年3月23号，是我第一次录制此视频。我现在仍然是否想要去葡萄牙？我觉得是的，因为我刚刚办好了去葡萄牙的长期签证。我现在感觉怎么样？感觉是比较复杂的。一个是我很期待去往葡萄牙，因为我即将开启我的博士的学习。另外呢，我还是有一些紧张，有一些担心的，担心在于有很多的行政手续，而且我就要独自一个人去往一个比较陌生的国家，所以我不确定我能不能，我会不会遇到一些问题，我自己能不能处理得好。比如说，办银行卡呀、手机卡呀、居留卡呀这些最基本但是非常必须的问题。什么特定物体可以代表我此刻的感受？我选了这个护照，因为在我去往葡萄牙之前，我是非常担心的，怕我不能及时的拿到这个 visa，不能及时的拿到签证，因为它是我能够去往葡萄牙的，可以说是钥匙吧。所以我选了它。现
Maybe
在
we
呢，
can pass to the next one. Sorry,
下来了。
just to have time. And you will see in the second case is the same participant as I was saying. No, the next
今
one.
天是2024年3月
No,
20。
this is the same
Sorry.
one.
The next one, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one. Oh, what happened?
这是我的第二个视频日记，距离我上一次的视频日记已经过去了3个月。这3个月呢，我的生活发生了很多的变化。在我第一次的视频日记，在我第一次录制视频日记的时候，还在我的原住国，也就是中国。现在呢，我已经来到了欧洲，我现在所在的国家是另一个欧洲国家。当然了，我一开始先从中国到达了葡萄牙，然后我又在5月份的时候从葡萄牙来到了现在这个欧洲国家。我的目标国仍然是葡萄牙，所以第一个问题，我是否仍然喜欢或者留在我现在所在的国家？我现在所在的国家是另一个欧洲国家。我觉得我现在在这里呢有2个原因。第一个原因呢，是我之前就在这里读书，然后我有很多的朋友在这里。 所以我选择目前没有待在葡萄牙，而是选择待在这个欧洲国家。主要是因为我觉得，当我到达葡萄牙之后，我没有什么认识的人，没有自己的社交圈子。然后因为一些日常的事情，比如说找房子呀、办银行卡呀这些琐事，让我没有精力再去social，再去认识新的朋友。但是呢，我又会觉得有一些孤独，所以我最后就做了这个决定，又从葡萄牙来到了我原来居住过的这个欧洲国家，因为我有很多的朋友在这里。然后还有另一个原因呢，就是我觉得在葡萄牙，尤其是在里斯本租房的价格很高。就我目前的情况而言呢，我
Are
待在
you gonna stop here so we have time? I
所以
think yes, I think you have an idea, you get an idea of what we are doing, but these two videos that we saw, they are already double. The voice is not the voice of our participant, is the voice of our researchers, the researcher Carol, that she did double the voice. And as you saw, for example, she says in the second video, I'm not in Portugal right now, I'm in another European country. This is pseudonymized already. In the original voice, it was saying the name of the country, but we already pseudonymized while transcribing this information. So our data it could be ready now to be open data or to go to the process to anonymize and be in open data as it is expected. So challenges, of course, we had a lot of challenges in this project. It was a huge challenge, I must say. First one, the same as dynamic, we have some challenge with commitment. So it was not that easy to maintain the participants' trust and that to ensure that they submit the video diaries every 3 months. But some countries lose some participants on the year. But I must say that even though we had a lot of people that finish it, and only in 1 or 2 cases we have less than the 6 participants that we were expected. The second, next slide, Asuncion, please. So we have a lot, there were challenges. We have a lot of different participants. There were some that were really used to networks and social networks and videos and telephones, and we had some that didn't. Also, the contest, the migration contests were really different. The expectations, how they understand the task. So it was a really different profile of participants. As I was saying, also the capability, the levels of technological literacy of researchers and participants. For example, in the Finland team, they were working with Thai participants, and these Thai participants needed help to do the video diaries. So our researcher had to do the support. He had to go and meet them every 3 months and do the video diaries with them. Another big challenge is as I was saying, the very different context. So it was difficult. It was very difficult to adopt a unified method across all these diverse geographical and socioeconomic contexts. The set of questions not always made sense in all these contexts, and it was difficult to connect this set of questions with the previous semi-structured interviews. So how do we articulate these video diaries with all the info that we had in the previous interviews? Again, as the dynamic was saying, the researcher didn't have control over the content, structure, or direction. So there were some misunderstandings in the interpretation of the questions. For example, there is this question in the set that says, what was your route, your migration route? And a lot of them answer, I'm going by plane or I'm going by boat. But the question we wanted to ask is how from one country to one country they went, did they stop in any country in the middle? So they didn't understand and we couldn't correct. And also the way we couldn't control how they developed the answers. It was shorter, longer, or in what kind of, clarifications that were needed, we could not ask for them. Creativity, as I was saying, there were some of them that they really choose avatars, and they really understand that they had to choose something that somehow translate their emotions. But there were some participants also that did not understand that task, that choose avatars by chance, just whatever they had in hand, or that choose always the same avatar through the years. There were some, and this is something important, there were some that were filming themselves, their faces, I must say something important here. A lot of our participants didn't want to, they were okay with showing their identity. They were okay with sharing their stories and assume their stories publicly, but we could not. Even though if they were okay, we could not because we were aligned with the open data. So this was also a difficult thing to explain. Expectations. So some of them, as that dynamic was saying also, I think they were expecting that they were going to be listened by the academics somehow. So they prepare a speech, they script, they write the speech, and then they read the speech on the video diaries. So we lose some spontaneously and some emotion, but only some of them did that. It's half-half. It's some of the challenges that we found. And then one question, the duration of the project is 1 year, 1 year enough to do a longitudinal analysis like this? Is a question that we keep asking ourselves. So what we really propose here, and I think is very important, is to have open discussions among consortiums and projects and researchers on how to work with this audiovisual methodology for social sciences under these GDPR and open data requirements, because it has been a huge challenge for all our team, for me as a visual anthropologist also. We should try to dialogue with the European Commission in order to achieve a balance between using these methodologies, audiovisual methodologies, and GDPR. Actually, I remember at the beginning, I was really frustrated, and I remember asking myself, why are we using video diaries if we cannot use the image needed the voice? So it was a process. It was a big process. I must say something important also is that our researchers will analyze their video diaries with the original voice, right? This is important because we understand that the emotions are really more clear in the original voice. But when we put all these data sets at open data, that's when we will have directly the double voice, and this is important. And finally, we would like to come up or somehow have a work group where we can come up with the general guides for researchers in pseudonymizing and anonymizing video diaries and other audiovisual material in general. So we could also, all of us, follow somehow some protocols and negotiate and help each other to navigate through all these requirements that we need to deal with. So I will just let the final to Asuncion. Thank you very much.
Yes, I have nothing to say. I think it's good to have discussion now. So you can see our outputs right now using these websites. And thank you, Amaya, for sharing your experience as the main coordinator of this big data collection. And thank you for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for really fascinating analysis of what you did, but also some really worthwhile recommendations, because we have this tension between the use of creative methods and all kinds of methods with GDPR, for example. And I think it's something that people have accepted, the constraints of GDPR, but we need also to engage with the Commission. And that includes, for example, the payment, for time, etc. So, yes, should we, okay, we have maybe 2 questions from the floor here, and then we pass on to the person online. And can I say, we actually shortchanged this session, so we can go on for a bit longer to say quarter to 1 UK time, by the way, because I know we have people from across the globe joining us. So we've got another, say, quarter of an hour to 20 minutes if we want to take it. So, Tico.
Yeah, I actually have a question for the presenters. So it's very interesting to see the development of video diaries and video diaries. My question is about the temporal aspects of how the data are analyzed. So obviously the design of the studies, the projects are prospective. You're collecting data as following the participants. But then the answers from participants obviously captures feelings that are affected by the events today, but also events happening in the past. So I was just kind of wondering how you engage with that temporal aspects of what comes up Rio Delta.
Amaya, do you want to maybe respond to that? Because I think it's probably more, in fact, yours than, I mean, it's obviously, but I think it's really more directed towards you. Could you
I'm
repeat?
sorry. Yes, I didn't hear too very well the question. Sorry.
Quality of your analysis, because you're affected by what has happened today, for example, but maybe also affected by what had happened in the past. So how do you kind of, when you're doing the analysis of these diaries, how do you combine this temporality, variable temporality?
Well, that one of the important things, and maybe Asuncion can help me in answering this, but is that we have these previous semi-structured interviews that also gave us a lot of context. So when we analyze the video diaries, when we will do that work, we have all this previous information about the year before of them. And that gives us a huge context of these participants. And that's now we are trying to understand how are we going to actually articulate, but Asuncion maybe can add
Yes,
something here.
Yes, it's true what Amaya said. So we started with semi-structured interviews, more like biographical approach. So we have already this kind of general ideas about the migration trajectories of our respondents in different contexts. And then after that, we map out their social networks. And then at the very end, we did the video diaries. So when we are analyzing the second set of data and the last set of data, we always go back to the semi-structured data set because it gives us a lot of context that we could not really capture by this visual methodology. So somehow it also shows the limitation of this methodology and also the social network mapping, because it's particularly just focused on one specific objective, is to capture this temporality, changing fluidity of decision-making during 1 year. So indeed, there are some people or some respondents who evoke their past life or maybe their future projects in the video diaries. But to be able to understand well these narratives, we always advised our researchers to cross actually their data with the first set of data set and the second set. And it always, actually, it's our general approach throughout the project. When we analyze also social network mapping, we always also, again, told them that, yeah, you need to go back to the semi-structured interviews because without those data, yeah, analysis would not be complete. So that's at least our general approach to data analysis, but we let all the local teams at least to have their own creativity in approaching their data. So we organized last time the last webinar of our project coordinated by the University Institute of Lisbon, where Amaya and other teams, other members are part of. And during this webinar, each team, share their results of the analysis of video diaries. So we realized that, indeed, it is very creative method because everyone have different approach to the data set. So that is one thing that we could share. Thank you for your question.
Thank you.
It's really an interesting question. I think in all cases it's slightly different because so I had access to the first interviews, but not of all participants, and that wasn't for me. Yes, we followed them for 6 months, but people, they didn't move, they stayed there. So that's the other thing. The participant their situation didn't change much. There wasn't much progress in their migration plans or decisions or paperwork and so on. So what we captured instead, I mean, we did the follow-up interview. I read the first interview and then tried to understand what has changed, when there were decisions, turning points in their narratives, whether they could explain what the reasons were. But apart from that, I think in all cases, this was more on trying to understand what people do in their everyday life and how they see things. And so that's why we came with this the migration journey. So there was a lot of things happening already from the way they were talking about things. So we didn't look at movement from, when we first started interviewing them and then last. It was more about how do they talk and what do they tell you about migration, and the stuff they shared was stuff they didn't share in interviews. So that kind of gave us a much deeper insight into dimension and aspects of decision making so the focus wasn't on so much, and then also 6 months is not enough anyway. If we stayed on another 6 months, then we would have some developments and we could, but I think the richness of the digital diaries was that people were talking about stuff, impressions, feelings, and what happened to them, what they think, where they went, what they heard of. It was more that kind of in-depth rather than following one person saying what has changed. But I understand the way Asuncion has done it makes sense as well. That would have been one aspect at looking at it. Ours has developed slightly different. So,
was there a yes?
but if there are people online.
Oh, okay, so are there people online who would like to ask a question? Okay. Oh, should we give Omalola?
So Omamola, she's saying, thank you, Asuncion and Amaya. First, I want to say that the video recording are a refreshing image for migrants who are usually depicted in less flattering images. Enjoy. Sorry.
Omalola, can I just explain, is one of our members of the dynamic, and she's working on the Nigerian in particular, but is also in charge of all the gender analysis in our project.
There was this one from here. So thank you, National Eleanor. A question usually online and methodology allows for tracking patterns, turning points, and contradictions in visual trajectories. Digital diaries allowed for such flexibility? So, Gian, I think we kind of answered this question, yeah?
Because can I say, just to reinforce what Nechla said, there's quite a lot of work that's been done particularly post the 2015 on following people en route, during their journeys. We didn't do that because these people didn't move. So we weren't actually following their journeys. And the people we kind of followed the journey were more the ones who, in a sense, in Morocco, they had actually completed the journey. So we weren't actually doing a digital diary as they moved. These people didn't move. They talked about their aspirations and their plans to migrate, but nobody actually shifted.
But I mean, that was the idea. We were hoping we will find some people. Actually, that was the idea why we wanted to do digital diaries. We said, yes, we want to follow them as they maybe move from one country to another, but it didn't happen. And of course, I think now thinking back, it's very unrealistic,
Please.
I mean, not sort of really a question, but just more thinking more about when you have all of this material, how to present it. I mean, I'm thinking also of a project that I'm doing. I'm a filmmaker, and I'm doing a participatory film project to follow people who are service users and clinicians in a mental health service over a period of time. And then you create a documentary film out of that.
Yeah.
But that means that you need to have an overall narrative in the final film, which is made up of multiple journeys and multiple trajectories. So I think it's interesting to see these projects. I mean, your project and the ones which is just been presented, which are small stories, but they're not necessarily stitched together. So I think there's an interesting contrast between this methodology and like a very conventional, if you call it methodology, which is narrative filmmaking.
Well, you could stitch some of these stories probably together, but we would need to have another layer of analysis, which we haven't presented.
I kind of stitched it together with these three phases. I think that's what I've been trying to do with this conceptualization of decision making, that it involves different stages. I've tried to group them into that, and I think it works. It makes sense, and it is illuminating. So in a way, I've kind of mapped it out, what people were, and everybody was sharing different things, you know. I didn't ask the same question, and everybody submitted what they wanted to submit and what they wanted to share. And in the end, I just put it together and made sense of it like that. So,
but I think there's also pros and cons to doing that, because if you create overall narratives, you're also reducing the individuality of each story as well, and maybe you're imposing something, and this is the problem you also have in documentary filmmaking.
but
May I jump in?
Yeah, hold
Just
on. Amaya, yes?
Yes. Well, actually, I'm also a filmmaker, and we are actually trying. It was a very challenging year, and we had all this information. We decided to give it a try, and we are now recollecting one set of video diaries for every country. And for these video diaries, these participants, we are asking a specific consent form that we will use these video diaries to do a documentary. What our idea would be is a short documentary that will use these voices and these avatars coming from very different contexts, migration contexts. I always say, try to do a song with this, an emotional song of the movement of humankind somehow from Asia to Europe. So we will give it a try. It's not a traditional documentary. It won't be, but I mean, documentaries are not that classical anymore. So yes, I think we could do something with this. At the beginning, I was, as I say, as a filmmaker, some kind of frustrated. But the truth is that when I see these video diaries, there's something hypnotic on them. There is something hypnotic on how they choose, how they are their speech, how they move the camera. So yes, I think we're gonna give it a try, and we are preparing now a short documentary for our final exhibition of the Aspire project in October, and we would love to share it with you also. Thank you.
Can I just ask, where's the exhibit? It's going to be a physical, or you're doing it entirely online?
Well, we will have both. Yeah, we will have a physical exhibition in Lisbon. We are the ones that are the ISCTE team are organizing this physical exhibition in October in Lisbon, and we will also have the online version. But the documentary will be shown as a film and in an auditorium, and it will be shown in presence. Let's see. I'm still starting to work with this material, but I can assure you there is something hypnotic here.
I can add also something about that. So we also encourage our local teams to reproduce the local exhibits that the University Institute of Lisbon will do on site, and we encourage them to do it online in their websites. So we will try to show it on our website and reproduce also this exhibit during the final conference of our project, and we will invite, of course, our sister projects, Dynamic and Paces, to be with us on this final discussions of decision making of aspiring migrants. And I want to add more about the avatars. We have also this project with Amaya and the ISCTE team to mix all these avatars and also present something maybe interesting for us to think about when we are looking at the exhibit, because we are still reflecting on how we could really analyze well the avatars, because as you know, like initially we did not think about avatars. We just would like to show the faces and capture the emotions through the faces, and now we have a lot of avatars. So yeah, we are also open for your suggestions, and if you have some knowledge on technical expertise on analysis of images, please share with us. Thank you.
There's actually some patterns on those avatars. We could see a lot of landscapes. We could see animals, teddy bears, and this kind of child objects. So there are for sure a lot of significance in here that we need to somehow organize visually also.
Runa, did you want?
Yes, if there's time, I know you're running out of time.
No, but please.
Okay, so it's not a question, I'm just thinking, I'm just reflecting on participation. So I know participation is going to be the next panel, so maybe we can carry on this reflection later on. But just thinking about participation methodologically, but also in the ethical dimensions of these studies. So how both the research teams here, what do they think about the level of the different nature of participation? Because there's been lots of data curation, there's been lots of limitations imposed by ethical committees, even if I'm a bit surprised because normally participants are given the right to choose if they want to waive their anonymity, for example, and apparently here they couldn't waive their anonymity.
But that's EU regulations.
Okay, but then there's also this idea of, so that there's also the option to override the confidentiality. So what did you do when you found these terrible stories that you, Eleanor, mentioned about? So, and then also, I think Amaya or someone else talked about that the researchers didn't have enough control on the, let's call them outputs, videos, whatever. But you, Nature, said instead there was a lot of freedom of what they could do. So I see there's this tension again between, you know, what we impose in a way and what they can do, and to what extent these methodologies are participatory or not, or if you need to rethink participation in this legal, ethical, and also methodological landscape. Yeah.
Okay, so Amaya, do you want to maybe respond to that? I can't hear you. I don't know if you've gone mute.
Again.
You're mute still. You're talking, we can see, but you're mute.
Yeah, we can see the mic is red.
Yeah, the mic is off.
Sorry, is it, are you listening? Can you?
I can hear.
Okay, sorry, it was not working. Could you summarize the question very quick, because I didn't listen the last part.
We don't have that much time for.
In brief, the extent of the participatory nature in this methodology you described, also
Yes.
the ethical restrictions.
Yes, actually, yes. This participation concept is a very discussed concept right now, because at what extent they do it by themselves, or what they extent they, for example, as I was saying, these expectations, right? They for who they are talking. That's something that they have in mind when they answer. So they have freedom, but it's not as we never have all the freedom, right? They know they're in a context, and they know this is for a research for a research project. Also, they need some help, some of them, but at the same time, as I was saying, some of them misunderstood the questions. But even though it's significant, that is significative. I mean, the way they react to this control or not control is also significative. What is interesting is in this audiovisual material is we have a lot of layers of significance, not only the textual, not only the visual or the audio. We need to combine how to react, how they want to be represented, how they represent themselves to us, what they choose one thing and another. And that's other levels of analysis. That's why we need time now. It's going to be a long process, but I think it's very rich because it has all these levels at the same time.
Thanks. I think we need to bring it to a close now. Can I just say thanks for everybody participating? And can I say the concept of participation, we can carry over maybe to the next session and continue discussing this. And that's something actually we want to put on the agenda. I think coming out of today's workshop is this concept of participation, both how it, because there's a regulation of, you could call it the regulation of participation, which is very strong. Okay, so just to say, it's now just after 1:45 UK time, and also Portuguese time, because we're on the same as the Portuguese. So, so we will be reconvening about 1:30 UK and Portuguese time, which will be 2:30 Central, Western and Central European time. And then I can't speak for other time zones that you may be. But
45 minutes.
45 minutes roughly, yeah. We'll come back in. And so the next session is the title we're talking, I haven't got my Yeah, so we've got, it's called Participation, Decolonization and Digital Ethnography. So we're kind of continuing with some of the themes that we've already had earlier on. And I think we want to be thinking about taking up some of these themes from one session to another. Yep. So have a good lunch or have a good break and see you back at, in about 40 to 45 minutes. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Eleanor. I'm sorry that I will not be able to be with you this afternoon, but Amaya will be there.
My best wishes to you, and hopefully Amaya can come.
Yes,
Yeah,
of course. Thank you so much.
I will be there.
Thanks so much for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Because I mean, it's